Hi, everyone, and welcome to the best damn video game podcast ever on 2dx.com. I am your host, Tim Torres, and we have a very small cast today. I guess no one wants to talk about Final Fantasy, except us. So with me today, we have...
Gabriel Zamora. I am the features editor at 2dx.com, and I freelance for Examiner.com and for PC Magazine.
And Jonathan Gibbs. I am the production manager at 2dx.com and creator of education.com.
Cool. And I guess we're the diehard Final Fantasy fans of
We are.
2dx.
That's us.
Because I guess we're the few who still care about the series and where it's going. And where it's going seems to indicate it's in the action direction. Final Fantasy 15 looks a lot like an action game. What do we know about this? Because we know very little. We've seen lots of grainy footage over the years. It's been in development hell for the past, oh my god, 8 years?
It's
right,
been a long time.
It's been close to, I think, 7 years, maybe going on 8 at this point, but 7 for sure, yeah.
Yeah, it was originally supposed to come out on PlayStation 3. It was the reason a lot of people got the Sony PlayStation 3, because it was going to be a platform exclusive. And then it turned out to skip an entire console generation altogether. It skipped PlayStation 3, Wii, Xbox 360, and Square Enix seems to be now developing it for PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, current-gen consoles. What else do we know about this? It seems like there's something new every day, but it's always something tiny, like a new artist or director who's assigned to the project.
Well, Gabe, do you know exactly who's working on this one? I'm not sure. I could look at it.
I believe, if I remember correctly, it's the Kingdom Hearts team, or it was the Kingdom Hearts team that was developing it.
Tetsuya Nomura, I think
Yeah,
he did 13.
Nomura, the director. Yeah, he basically the I wouldn't say mastermind, but the guy behind the Kingdom Hearts series, pretty much branched out and decided he wanted to make a Final Fantasy game of his own, based on the Final Fantasy XIII mythos. And there's a lot of rumors as to how that got started. I think some people say he disagreed with what's the other guy's name?
Toriyama.
Supposedly,
Toriyama is the guy who directed the Final Fantasy XIII
Final
games.
Fantasy XIII, the original 13 games, yeah.
Right.
And,
The Lightning Saga.
The Lightning Saga, yeah. So there's a lot of rumors and really nothing's really clear as to why they decided to branch out and make several different types of Final Fantasy XIII games. But originally 15 was supposed to be a spin-off Final Fantasy XIII game, basically his action take on a Final Fantasy XIII game, based loosely around the Final Fantasy XIII mythos, like a Nova Crystallis mythos, which is like specific gods that they created for those storylines.
And somehow they all tie them together.
And they're all tied up loosely by that mythos.
So a lot of
but
the
they're not
controversy is that because it started off as Final Fantasy 13 Versus, and now
Right,
all of a
exactly.
sudden it's Final Fantasy 15, people are saying, I didn't see it this way when they announced it at E3 last year. And maybe because I'm slow, but people were saying, oh no, they just got lazy and slapped on the 15 and that's it.
Well, I think people thought it was lazy. I thought it was a really good idea. I thought it was something they should have done a while ago, because people were really worried about Versus 13. No one heard anything about it for a while. It's been in development hell for a long time. So I think
I totally agree. I don't think it was a bad thing to turn a pre-existing game into 15, because it was going to be quote unquote new content anyway.
Yeah.
So I think that's just people being mad for the sake of being mad, and I think that comes from the fact that a lot of us diehard Square fans have become weathered through the ages with our once loved company and the stuff that they're pulling lately.
I feel that I've heard some complaints in respect to 15 because of the fact that it's an action game, and some fans are not really okay with that, and I think I've heard more complaints about that in respect to it being a Final Fantasy 15 game than the fact that they just got lazy and then slapped the 15 name at the end of it, which I can see, I suppose, the merit of as far as complaints go. But I mean, as a Final Fantasy fan, to be perfectly honest with you, I've never really cared about the battle systems all that much.
Really?
As crazy as it sounds, I know, it's silly, like, but I never play a Final Fantasy game, because the gameplay grips me. It's usually the story that does it, and then I kind of tolerate the gameplay, to get through to the story. It's
For
silly.
me, I
Now,
mean,
it's
it
really
feels
weird
like
because
it's evolved with it, though. I mean, that's been
it
part of it
has.
from the beginning, and so I just feel like it should keep that tradition. And I've talked to other friends about this. They're like, "So what? You want current consoles to have a turn-based game?" Like, and when they ask it that way, I'm like, "Well, maybe not." I like what Final Fantasy 13 and that whole series was doing. It was still kind of turn-based, but it was also action-ish, right? So the next step there, at least in my opinion, would be to be able to control the character, kind of like Lightning Returns. Like if
Right.
they could evolve further with even that. But this
No.
seems like it's going the way of Kingdom Hearts. And really, we
Yeah.
can't even be sure because I watched a YouTube video. Somebody on YouTube really dissected the trailer, like the all the footage so far that we've got from this after the new trailer. They've zoomed in on like the little icons in the bottom right-hand corner and show that Noct, the main character, can like switch different swords, and it seems like he can do a specific number of actions per like amount of time. So we're not sure if it's going to be Kingdom Hearts type action or if there's going to be some kind of turn-based element to it, I think. Because there's meters and they run out and there are different swords and different things that he can do.
Yeah. Well, I definitely agree that it's kind of too early to tell. The earlier footage that I saw did look like Kingdom Hearts. Like back in 2010, they
Mm.
released a trailer after about 5 years of just silence, and it was very Kingdom Heartsy. So I mean, you would have the weapon switching and stuff, but it looked like you were just kind of running in there and stabbing and slashing with the weapon like you would in Kingdom Hearts, with occasional like character switching and such. The later trailer that they had last year for E3, the trailers, yeah, too, I think, they were a little more mixed, and it was a lot harder to determine what was gameplay, what was cutscenes. A lot of it, to be perfectly honest, looked like QTEs, and I hate to say that, but I'm holding my breath. I don't know for sure what it looks like, what it's going to be, but
At what point did it look like that to you?
the one that sticks out for me was the when he's fighting the Iron Giant. And
Oh
then he
yeah.
grabs
yeah,
the
yeah,
sword
you're
and he
right.
parries that. That looked to me like it was a reaction command from Kingdom Hearts or a QTE from any other game.
Like Resident
Uh,
Evil.
right.
Right.
So that kind of took me. I was like, I don't know about that.
There's another part
However,
that to me that looks a little bit too good to be true. Primarily, actually, there's two parts. The whole thing with the Leviathan at the
yes,
end
I knew you were going to say that.
looks like a cutscene. It looks like a cutscene with it has a heads up overlay with like Noctis' commands and all that, but it looks like you're not in control
Well,
of
see,
Noctis at
I
that
don't like
point.
to say that because I mean we've had good games that pull this kind of thing off, like God of War, right? Where
Yeah.
you have these huge epic boss battles and they turn out being amazing. Do I want it to be just like God of War? No. Do I want to have the experience or to feel that way, the same way I felt when I played that and say, "Oh my God, this is so awesome"? Yes. So I'm leaning more towards optimism on that. I feel like
I mean, it would
maybe
be
they'll
great.
do it right.
It would be a nice little cyclical thing too, because Cliffy B, I don't know if you remember him saying this, but he was actually inspired by Final Fantasy VI, making the first Gears of War, and you can kind of see that in the way that you have like your team going through this dilapidated world of ruin basically, and each battle is kind of like its own little turn-based thing where you hide behind cover, wait, shoot, wait. And it even has like a little guitar twang victory tune at the end of each battle. So I think that would be a neat little cyclical, like everything comes together moment. But the other thing that struck me was this point. It was a very like parkour QTE looking moment where Noctis like wall runs on a wall and fights soldiers in this exquisitely detailed dining room. I
Oh
would
yeah.
love to believe all that's
That's actual
playable.
gameplay, yeah.
Where part of the game is Noctis can wall run. The other thing that strikes me is really is it playable or not? Are the whole teleportation stuff he does. He's like didn't Cloud or Sephiroth or one of the characters in Advent Children do that? This basically looks like
Yeah,
Advent Children.
it was much. It was later on in the Seven universe with Advent Children, like you said, because they weren't able to do any of that stuff during the actual game. I mean, I don't know where that came from. But as far as 15, I think that I've read somewhere that it's basically he targets something and then you can, I guess, throw his sword, and he can teleport to it. I'm not sure. What
I heard the same thing.
science is
Basically,
gonna be behind that.
He'll shoot the sword out or send the sword out and then teleport towards it. And I do remember also that Nomura himself said that he was planning on I guess emulating that Final Fantasy Advent Children sort of style.
Yeah,
where
everything's
high action,
fast and yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of what he was going for. I think Dissidia was also in the same style. It had that crazy kind of like aerial, nonsensical action, which is fun. I don't have a problem with that. But
yeah, me too. I think Dissidia doesn't get all the I guess praise it deserves, because I thought it was really cool gameplay wise, and I would love to see that put into a proper Final Fantasy, with a proper story and campaign mode.
Yeah.
Campaign mode. Hopefully that's the whole game is a campaign mode. Could you imagine a multiplayer Final Fantasy 15?
Well, I can't imagine a Final Fantasy 15 because I don't know enough about it, but I could see a Final Fantasy multiplayer game. Like if they went back to, say, basics, like the original Final Fantasy game, and like they gave you control of one character, and you can like connect with other players and make your own party and play like like a Warrior of Light sort of thing, and then you go and play through the campaign. With
you mean campaign? 1. I'm sorry. They have the
like
person versus person. Yeah. They have PvP on Realm Reborn. So.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, that's an MMO though, so it's to be expected that you would have like PvP because you want to be able to play against other players. But I mean more like in like just like a co-op sort of thing. Like you want to party up with your friends and play like a multiplayer campaign of like the original Final Fantasy. I could see that happening. I could even see like an action version of that, kind of like Dark Souls, where you just party up kind of in the same sort of style with 3 or 4 party members and just kind of go through dungeons and exploring. But that's
or even just leaving messages around the world, showing other players what you do.
The Mughals in Final Fantasy IX, how they would send mail to each other.
That was
when you send messages that just. And that's kind of what I wanted to also get into in terms of what we think that Final Fantasy 15 should be, in terms of like what you said, Tim, when you earlier outlined everything that happened. What happened to the last generation, PS3, Xbox 360? We didn't get an actual, what I call a Final Fantasy. So PS1 era, they had Final Fantasy VII. Then they had Final Fantasy VIII, which kind of branched out even more with more ideas.
Yeah.
And then so 7 and 8, they really messed with the formula, but they didn't completely change it. It was kind of like they were finding themselves on the hardware. When we got to Final Fantasy IX, it was a culmination of all of that awesome research that they did with the previous 2 games, and then they put it into something that people can enjoy, both from 7 and 8, but also people that were fans of the old school. With this past generation, we got all those 13 games, and it was just like Square was a lost college student that dropped out and spent all of its money going around the world and has nothing to show for it, honestly.
That does bring up an interesting point, though. It's because you mentioned earlier that Final Fantasy 13 wasn't quite a Final Fantasy game, but then that begs the question: well, what do you consider a Final Fantasy game? It's tricky to define, and I know we talked about this before when we were thinking about this discussion earlier. But I'm just curious. I mean, I have my own thoughts as well, but.
Well, I think we're going to differ in our opinion because, like, from what I heard you say earlier, the battle system was never a real big thing with you. Well, for me it is because for, 10 games, they didn't mess with that, really. They kind of built upon it. But then, I mean, along came 12, and sure enough, that was just weird, but I kind of liked it. And then 13 came along, and it kind of was a continuation of what the ATB, Active Time Battle System, could have evolved into, and then we got Lightning Returns, and that was yet another evolution or iteration. Um, is going to a Kingdom Hearts style where I think it should go? Probably not, and I hope that that's not really what it is. I hope we're just wrong about it. But aside from just the battle system, I hate to be such like I hate to be such a conservative here, but I would like to see more of an epic and open world and oh my gosh, I didn't know I could come across this. Don't show me everything. Don't give me an objective list. Don't put it on the map type game where I figure shit out for I'm sorry. I figure stuff out for myself.
No,
You know?
that sounds perfect. I hope it turns out that way. I would love a big. The great thing about Final Fantasy VII.
Like that too.
What?
What games recently have been like that? The last one that I can think of is Final Fantasy IX with the treasure hunting and all those side quests.
Yeah, yeah. FF7, that feeling. 12 is where the series
had a ton of that. Yeah.
12 gave you so much to do in the beginning of the first 4 hours of the game. You're allowed to go into so many places. You could get murdered by giant T-Rexes. It was perhaps too open. I mean, not that that's a bad thing. I was going to say Dark Souls is really open too. That was the last game I played, Dark Souls 2, where you're allowed to go into all these different branches, and the game's just like, here you go, let's see what you could do. I think Final Fantasy 15 would do well to take inspiration from that, not specifically Dark Souls 2, but from trusting the player, basically, would be great.
But you know what? I think that we should trust the developer to continue on the formula that they built on for the past 25 years. Because when you look at, like you said, Final Fantasy 12, that was emulating an MMO experience. So that's why it was so open, because they wanted you to be able to F up and go to the wrong place and get slaughtered. But the formula before that was so very calculated. It made it to where you could see something, but you necessarily wouldn't be able to go there. And if you did find out how to get there, then you would know immediately, well, this is not the place for me, and this is not the way I should be going. So they kind of helped you along in the story while still maintaining a certain feel of being open. You might pass a cave and be like, oh, okay, well, I see that, and I'm on my way to this town, but I might eventually have to go back to this cave. And then sure enough, that would lead to the next part of the story. Whereas today, it's just, let me stare at the map and move my cursor in the direction of the X and get there, and then that's it. And I feel that the series has just lost the novelty of it all.
Oh, it definitely has. I mean, the 13 games, I mean, they tried to alleviate that with 13.2 and Lightning Returns. Your mileage may vary with how well they succeeded. I would love to go back to the open. That's just.
I mean, airships and wonder and good music. I mean, not to say that it wasn't Final Fantasy music. Come on now, they kept a lot of. I don't even want to get into that part because it makes me so mad. I'm the musician. I mean, I'm a musician, and that's like it's my heart.
You didn't like Leona Lewis singing the end credits of FF13?
Well, that was all right, you know. But then
came out of nowhere. The rest of
it's
like what?
Yeah, it did feel forced, to be honest with you.
What exactly? I don't even know.
It seems like they even lost. It seems like they even lost that. They lost that whole concept because it was just slapped on the end credits. It had nothing to do with the story, whereas in Final Fantasy IX, Melodies of Life was this tune that you heard all the way throughout the game, and then suddenly someone sings it in the end credits. You're like, oh, wow, that's beautiful. And in Final Fantasy VIII, it was featured in the middle of the game like a music video or something. But,
right. Oh my God,
that
song was like the biggest thing ever. It
still
is.
Eyes on Me.
Right, when you're in that spaceship and I'm like, is someone singing right now? What's going on?
Yeah, every karaoke bar has that song.
Oh, we sang it. Oh, Diana and I sang that at when we went out for karaoke the other night.
Fei Wong. One thing I hope I do like the futuristic direction. I thought that 7 did a really cool job. I thought 8 did a really cool job. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe you couldn't. I don't know. I love 8's look, and I was really hoping 13 would do something really cool with this world too, but it didn't allow you to because of the way it was designed. Like you weren't allowed to like explore the town of Palom, Polum, or wherever Hope's father was.
Right.
I really like the look of Versus 15, 15 um, so far. I really think the whole fantasy based in reality tagline Nomura has been using is a pretty cool idea. Using basically, I think it looks like Tokyo right now is what we've seen most of the time.
Right.
I think that's neat. I think it is going to be like FF7, where you spend a lot of your time in this Tokyo-looking area, this urban landscape, and then you leave and suddenly have a whole world open up to you.
Oh God, we can only hope. But you know what? Going along with that, I don't mean to cut you off, Gabriel, but I want to get this out there. I am not wholly convinced.
Gabriel, Tim.
No, Gabe was about to talk.
Oh, he was. Oh, okay.
But I'm not wholly convinced that Agnes' philosophy has nothing to do with Final Fantasy 15. I just don't believe it. Because there was too much going on in that cutscene, and they're like, oh, this is just a test for our technology, but come on, there was summoning going on in there. The guy that got shot looks just like one of the people that was in the trailer, and it does show a whole other world.
Wait, isn't that the engine they're using right now? They gave up on
switched engines.
They switched from Crystal Tools, which the 13 games ran on. They chugged on eventually, and switched over to Agnes Philosophy. Isn't that the engine that they're using for 15?
Yeah, I believe so. If I'm not mistaken, yeah, it was originally Crystal Dynamics or Crystal. What the hell they called it? I don't know.
Tools.
Crystal Tools, and then they rechanged the name to the White Engine, and now it just dropped it all together. It's Luminous now, the Luminous engine that Agnes Philosophy was using. So,
oh, that's what it's called now, Luminous.
I believe so, unless they change it again. But yeah.
So we want a big open world that we could all enjoy and explore and find cool stuff, and we want airships back.
Yeah.
I guess we should probably have a Cid come back.
Of course.
I
want to hear the crystal theme.
The crystal theme. I think the story. What do we know about the story right now? We know it stars this sullen-looking guy.
The crystals are actually in it. That's
yeah.
That's
basically
part of the story.
If I recall, the plot is that the kingdom that Noctis is from, I don't remember the name of it, is the last kingdom with actual crystals, like magical crystals that they use, and like a neighboring kingdom kind of like has a little coup, and they take over. They attack and take over Noctis.
Because they've already taken two other kingdoms' crystals.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the plot, basically.
I think that all happens. All of that happens before the trailer because it's a flashback showing Noct eating with his father, and his father is still alive there. But the bad guys come and they kill his father and take the crystal. So that entire cutscene is Noct using Leviathan to go back to their place and take it back from them.
Huh. Have you guys heard anyone make any Hamlet connections here?
Yes.
I remember reading about that. Like Shakespeare's got to be the basis.
In the trailer that Gabe just mentioned earlier, that the 2010 one, I think that's the 2000 when they were in a skyscraper and it shows the girl and then some kind of machine takes over and like shoots all the glass out of the skyscraper. It was that one. Apparently there was some kind of Shakespearean quote there. We also know that there is a female sort of interest there. And in the trailer, it's arranged so that you see like half of the characters on this side of the screen and half of the characters on this side of the screen with Noct on this end and the girl on the other. So I'm thinking like Romeo and Juliet type, we love each other but we're in different families of war type story going on here.
That's what the story has to do. The story has to make you care. It has to be relatable in some fashion, which the 13
characters
games,
that you can care about and hate.
Yeah, and that you know what their motivations are and what exactly is happening would be great. Square has really not delivered on that front in a long time. If anyone has any examples of them having a decent story in the last couple of years, that would be great.
Well, they say that lots of people hate 8 because of its story, but I really liked its story, and I liked that all of the characters had motivations and personality, and I know that Zell loved hot dogs. And you know,
So we're actually bred, some kind of Japanese bread in the original game.
and just
It
little
would.
things like that in eight. When like in Balam Garden, there were those three student girls that all through the game they were always together. So like even when it was about to be the end of the world, they were still together. And then in the end credits, you saw them as a group in the background, just like little fun things like that. Or in nine, when you're walking around Limblom and you talk to the old man, and he's like, "I forgot something," and then you come back to him later in the game, and he's like, "Oh, I remember what it was I needed to do. Take a dump." It's like what? Y'all know about
They need
the
to get away from this whole. I think there's a lot of anime. There was a lot of anime in 13. There wasn't a whole lot of anything else. Like the thing I like about other creators like Kojima and anyone who name drops Breaking Bad and Western media, they, I don't know. I feel like the Square guys just kind of don't play other games or read other things that may
What do you
not.
mean by anime?
Well, 13, it's just very it seems very designed for the Akihabara otaku crowd, with the pink hair and
Yeah.
the very Snow especially. Snow I think might have been a character, a concept that was lost in translation. The big naive hero. So it would be great if I hope this whole Hamlet thing is true. I would love to see Final Fantasy Sons of Anarchy edition.
I would
where,
like to make it more Game of Thrones-ish.
Yeah.
That was the best thing about Matsuno. Matsuno is a prime example. He's someone who has interests. Yasumi Matsuno did the whole Ivalice universe in the Final Fantasy games, from Final Fantasy Tactics, Tactics Advance, Vagrant Story, and Final Fantasy XII. He's a guy who's interested in history, real-world history, and just conflicts, events, and he gets into the details of these universes, very minute. And some of the games like 8 hinted at that, 7 definitely did, although that still was heavily influenced by stuff like Evangelion and Berserk, which aren't bad things, but I feel like...
Well, like you said, anything that has to do with the Ivalice universe is just very... It's just got its own feel. Even Vagrant Story, which...
I feel like especially in Vagrant Story, yeah.
Which is set in Ivalice.
It is, absolutely.
Yeah, now it is.
Yeah. Is that like Canada? Wasn't one of Matsuno's games considered not part of the Ivalice series anymore? Not to get off topic. I thought I heard something like that.
I don't remember.
But anyway, I think that the bigger point is that when you play games like that and you kind of experience the story, you feel, I don't know, it's like it was well thought out. I'm not sure how better to describe it as, but it's just like I feel like somebody sat down, put the story together, and kind of like reviewed everything they were organizing and said, this works, this doesn't work. I want this story to be concise. I want this story to have, like you said, history. And you see that reflected in the games. You see that in Tactics. You see that in Vagrant Story. You see that in 12. And 12 had its own issues with the story because I feel like it wasn't as well presented as other games, but it still had a strong history to it. Mm-hmm. You play something like 13 and nothing quite makes sense, and you have the whole mythos to the whole game and how everything came to be, but nothing really matters.
It wasn't well executed.
It doesn't play out at all in the story. And it just feels shallow. It's like, oh, look, we just created this whole backstory, but it doesn't matter. We're just going to slap it in some data log because all you're going to see.
And you have to read it.
Yeah, and then all you're going to see are these crazy, silly cutscenes that don't quite make sense, and your characters move along and further the plot in ways that don't make any sense, and you're like, at no point do you feel like these are believable people in a believable world doing things that make sense. It's silly. Whereas if you look at something like Tactics, you can understand why Ramza did the things he did, and why he and the people who allied themselves with him went with him and did that. And everything makes sense. And that's not something that I feel the newer Final Fantasy games have a lot of. It's that sense that sense of history.
But we're hoping that 15 does do this.
15 is trying. At least I can see with their focus on this war and the conflict of the crystals and all that. It seems like at the very least it's going to be political, and that's not
always
a bad
grounds
thing,
for a good story.
Yeah, it's good. It is good. It is, and I can't say I know much about the cast enough to say whether it's going to be a good cast or not. So right now, it honestly seems like a husband simulator to me. There's a bunch, you got a bunch, of,
Yes.
which is fine. I mean, they look like interesting guys, but I don't know. That's all I've gleaned from this so far.
You're right. Are there any playable female characters? It looks like it's just Noctis and his merry band of men.
Yeah, the little boy band, yeah, which is fine, but I haven't seen any female characters aside from Stella, I think her name is. And then in the trailer, I think there was a black-haired girl, but she's kind of like not really known. Nobody knows who she is or where she came from or what she
I
does.
didn't even see that. Wow.
It would be great to have a Lulu, a Riku type character, Tifa, something. Tifa who is probably one of the
Tifa,
strongest Final Fantasy characters.
Tifa, I happen to like a lot of. I'd rather they stayed away from the tropes that they've established so far. These character archetypes where they have the bubbly kind of like silly young girl, and they have the mature, you know, well endowed sisterly character, and then of course the naive main character, female. I'd rather they actually do something interesting with them, but you
That's a
know.
good point. 15 seems to be throwing away everything we expected from Final Fantasy, um, with its style, especially the Kingdom Hearts combat.
Right.
I hope it's a bit faster, maybe more varied than Kingdom Hearts, because I think that's the thing that puts a red flag up for me most, because I don't know. I'm speaking as someone who's not the biggest Kingdom Hearts or Crisis Core fan, and to see a main numbered Final Fantasy game switch over to that style, I hope there's more to it than button mashing, which I feel like I do most of the time in those games.
In Kingdom Hearts' defense, the first one was pretty button mashy. I'll give you that. The second one actually allowed you to do a lot with its combo system. It was actually pretty in depth. If you decided to actually string your attacks together properly, you could do a
Oddly
lot.
enough, Nomura directed that game.
He did who?
The
Nomura?
person, yeah, who's directing this game.
You could do a lot with the combat engine to the point where it looks almost like an anime version of Devil May Cry. And if you look at some of these gameplays, like the gameplay videos on YouTube and such, you can see some like level 1 like boss fights, and you're playing as a level 1 character who can die in one hit, but you can just slap the shit out of whatever you're fighting if you know what you're doing. And it's really, really good looking. And I think in that respect, I think the gameplay has a lot of promise. I'm not sure if it's fits the Final Fantasy, framework and all that. I'm not sure how well it'll mesh or not, but I think I'll hold off.
Considering everything that you just said and the fact that Nomura is directing this game and directed that game, and everything you said about the battle system, it's making me think that this is even going to be more Kingdom Heartsy than we think, because who's doing the soundtrack? Yoko Shimomura, who also did the Kingdom Hearts soundtrack.
Yeah.
So
we're all okay with that, right?
I'm okay with that.
She's fantastic.
I've had some arguments with some of my fellows in video game music dumb. When I heard the trailer music for the one that came out in E3, before I realized it was her, I was like, that sounds a lot like Shimomura. Because of the piano, she uses a piano a lot. And,
oh man, yeah, I love her.
It's not a bad thing. It's her style. And so I recognized her style, and I'm a fan of it. But I just hope that it branches out and that it helps this iteration, this chapter, be a new and great thing that we all want it to be. Okay.
So what else do
Read in between the lines.
What else do we want? We want chocobos, Moogles. Would they even fit in this universe?
I think that there is no excuse for not including them. I'm sure
they're always in. Right.
You can squeeze a Robo Moogle in there if you need to. I think it'll work
Just
fine.
make them the regular Moogles. I don't even care.
Which ones are the regular ones? The ones from 6, 9?
I would say the ones from.
No, I meant like because it's futuristic. The joke was like robot Moogles, but yeah, regular Moogles are fine too.
Well, I don't know. 7 didn't have Moogles. Oh yeah, it did. Yeah.
It had like the one mini game with the Moogle.
Yeah, that.
And Kate Sith rides a big caveman-looking Moogle.
Yeah.
What else are we missing? What else do we feel it's missing, or that it needs to be? You know what? I feel like if we played, since
More
he's
summons.
co-directing the game. Oh, summons. Oh, they got to be a big thing.
Yeah, I mean,
Summons are always a big thing.
they're used as weapons apparently in this one with Leviathan. So I'm just waiting to see what else we get to see.
Wasn't that the plot of 9?
9.
Summons were
It was the
weapons.
plot of 9,
Well, they played into the
and
story.
that was amazing. I remember being like, I forgot how old I'm, probably 16 years old or something, and seeing Bahamut go against Alexander.
I remember the first time that you actually see a summon in action is when Braun summons Odin and destroys
that city, Clara.
The whole city just goes up in flame, and that one scene was maybe 30 seconds long, and it just cemented the power that in the story, at least, that these monsters, these creatures had. And there are things like that. It's all part of really good storytelling, I feel. Just little scenes like that really kind of drive home what you're fighting for, what these characters are doing.
And all utilizing the devices that the series has developed throughout the ages. Because, in some games the summons are just this thing that you use in battle, in other games they're huge weapons of war, and yet in others they're part of the main storyline in terms of being, what were they in 10? They were like spirits of people or something?
Spirits of people. The main character is a summoner. That's a thing.
Yeah.
Yuna, Rydia in Final Fantasy IV. Maybe that's Noctis's role or something. He's the Prince of the Kingdom, so of course he's the summoner, or something like that.
I'm still holding on to Agni being in the game, so I just hope she is. Because if that's it, then she was a summoner.
I wouldn't be too surprised. I mean, they had the sorry to cut you off. They had the machine guns and such in certain sections of that trailer. So possible.
Yeah, and I mean, you got like Tokyo, like Tim said, you got Tokyo-like place, and then this other one was very slummish. When the camera pans out, it's like really third world-ish, which just hopefully adds to the overall, world of that game. I just hope it's a good game. I really do.
Me too. I think we would get a better indicator if we ever got Final Fantasy Type 0 to come out here, because it's got the same director. Nomura and Hajime Tabata are directing FF15, and Tabata worked on, as well as Crisis Core and The Third Birthday, 2 games I really do not care for, especially Third Birthday.
One of which does not exist.
Yeah, one of which... I'm still waiting for Parasite Eve 3. Boy, wouldn't it be great if they made that? But Tabata also worked on Type 0, which seems to look a lot like, I guess, an appetizer or a prelude to this game, at least in style, because that looks like a lot like an action game, Final Fantasy the action game, with all the button presses are just the moves you...
What console is that? I thought it was handheld.
It was originally PSP.
PSP. We're probably going to get a translation patch this summer, hopefully, that we could try out. Square has yet to actually release it officially on the Vita or on the PSN or whatever. It would make a lot of sense if they did that. I imagine that would make people more excited for 15, because that seems to be a big budget console version of what Type 0 looks like. Because I played a demo, and each button was like, oh, triangle is the fire spell, circle is this awesome spear attack, X is jump. It was very direct and what's the word? Actiony. It was very actiony, and I feel like
Lightning Returns.
Lightning Returns.
Yeah,
I guess a little bit, but also like Crisis Core in the sense that you had you went on missions and you just had this map. Sometimes not a linear map, which I thought was nice. It wasn't just a straight line, and you run around and you basically fight like any action game.
Well,
so I guess I don't know.
There's been they haven't been releasing a lot of information as of late, as far as I've seen. But E3 is coming up, so
this would be the time for them to.
I mean, I expect
give us as many. They really should just say, look, here's what the game is going to be like. Here's all this awesome stuff you could do. A release date would be fantastic. A playable demo on the floor would be great. I'm not going to be able to go, unfortunately, so hopefully you guys can get your hands on that.
Hope so.
I'm not going either.
Hopefully they could release it, maybe, on
this year.
PSN or Xbox Live or something, the demo, so people can actually try it out. Go that route Nintendo seems to be going, where they just bypass media and let the people who really care about the games to play them. Yes, this is Square's moment to be like, look, we're serious now.
Right, because I don't know if I can handle another what, 10 years of nonsense.
Of the same characters and story. That's really the great crime, isn't it? Because I've parroted this before, but with every console generation we've had at least 3 games, 3 casts of characters to care about. And this past one, it was very experimental, but I don't think the experiment really.
The experiment failed.
Yeah.
To come back to greatness, Square. Come on.
It seems to be that Final Fantasy is going off in all these weird directions, and Bravely Default seems to be.
Oh God, that was so well. I won't shade it too much, but I'll just say this much: the first half was amazing.
Right. I think me and Tim were talking about this before. It goes on for way too long, but you're right. It's
got serious pacing problems.
The first half was fantastic. That was the best half of Final Fantasy game I ever played.
But I was going to say that seems to be what. Like this here, okay, we're going this weird direction. Here's what you old school fans can have: Bravely Default, which is basically a Final Fantasy game under a different banner. But it falls apart at the end. I'm actually not that far into it.
It gets very repetitive, and
we'll say that much.
Yeah, I think we'll just leave it at that. You'll experience it yourself.
You'll have a big WTF moment.
Okay. If I keep playing. There's so many games. So hopefully Bravely Second will turn out better than the last half of Bravely Default. And hopefully Final Fantasy 15 will be the game of every Final Fantasy fan's dreams. Guys, do you have any other wishes, expectations you want to get off your chest?
I wanted to ask a question before we wrapped up, and this might go on for just a little while, but do you think that we're being old curmudgeons about it? Do you think that so for me, I jumped into Final Fantasy at 7, and so of course everybody who was playing Final Fantasy before 7 was like, oh God, this is stupid, they're breaking tradition, blah, 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 blah. It's nothing like 5, it's nothing like 4, it's nothing like 6, which is the best one ever. And I went back and played all the Final Fantasies and quite frankly loved 6. So I ended up liking one that came before the one that I was introduced. But do you think that we're being old and curmudgeon-y and saying 13 is awful when I have seen on YouTube comments people say 13 is the best thing ever, and of course they're like younger people because probably they came in on that.
That was actually a point that I wanted to touch on. I didn't get a chance to because I had forgotten about it. But the big thing is that we're looking at Final Fantasy through our own eyes. Obviously, us being an older generation of gamers. Like my first Final Fantasy game, I was like 10 when I played it, which was I think 5 or 6, something like that. And I mean, I've grown on since then. And the first Final Fantasy game that I actually really, really liked was 9, and I was in like high school when I played that because I played it a little bit afterwards. But my thing is that Final Fantasy, I feel like Square Enix is catering towards a specific crowd. And I believe they've even said this much. They don't design Final Fantasy games for the older gamers. Final Fantasy games are designed for teens, the shonen crowd, the kids who pick up their, Narutos and their One Pieces and all that stuff. That's what Final Fantasy is designed for. As you said earlier, Tim, about how Final Fantasy 13 looked like it was designed for people from the otaku crowd. That's Final Fantasy. That's what Square Enix wants Final Fantasy to be. So in some respects, it's kind of hard to go and say, oh, this is what Final Fantasy needs to be, because Square Enix has a completely different idea of what they want Final Fantasy to be. It should be, in my opinion, I wouldn't mind seeing high fantasy, but I like seeing sci-fi fantasy as well, and it does that really well with 7 and 8. Well, I'm not a big fan of 8, but 7 was a great sci-fi fantasy. Parasite Eve 1 and 2 were great sci-fi fantasies. So it could be good in that respect if they go for that direction. But they don't. They want to make a specific, I wouldn't say immature, but that is kind of how it comes off as. It's immature sort of Final Fantasy game for the younger audience. So, yeah, I feel like our age does come to play in how we look at these games, because we're older and we expect better stories, and Square doesn't intend to deliver that. You're not going to see Final Fantasy Berserk Edition anytime soon.
Yeah, there seems to be a passing of the baton, a passing of the torch. As we get older, we get more or less influential. No one cares about old us, which is unfortunate because it seems like that's happening to a lot of series like Resident Evil and Castlevania. There seems to be, I mean, what's in vogue is, let's face it, it's Call of Duty. Final Fantasy XIII specifically used that as an influence. That's why it's basically a corridor shooter, except an RPG. And I guess I don't know, they don't care about our opinions. Some people do. I mean, some developers do. Like Bravely Default feels like a bone that's thrown, basically. But Nomura, I think Nomura can do a good job. One game that I regret forgetting about earlier when I was like ranting about how they never made a good story in the past like several years was The World Ends With You. And I think once he has a good premise and a good team behind him, I think he can do really good stuff. World Ends With. Okay. Any other notes, or check your notes?
I think I got my dual talk about Final Fantasy on a 2DX podcast fix for the year.
I think my final point really, and the point that I was kind of going towards before, is that Square kind of, if they want a good Final Fantasy game, they have to stop pandering to specific crowds and focus rather on just making a good game.
I'm sorry to cut you off, but I want to. Someone in our group between us said this very thing. You're pandering to a group that doesn't care about you, and you're leaving the ones that do care about you out in the cold.
Right.
Yes.
I'm not sure who said that either, but that sounds really familiar.
I think it was you.
But maybe it was. I don't know.
Sure.
But
sounds great.
I definitely agree with that thought. It's just that's exactly how it feels like. It's like you're making a Final Fantasy game for a specific audience, as opposed to making just a good general story. Like I don't ever look at like a Disney movie and go, oh man, these guys made a movie for kids. I go, oh look, Disney or Pixar, they decided to make a good movie that anybody could watch and enjoy. I still look back at something like The Lion King or Aladdin, and I enjoy the hell out of these movies. They're not, just because they're animated doesn't mean they're for kids. They're for everybody. Just because it's a video game doesn't mean you have to design it and pander to younger audiences. Anybody can enjoy them. You have a strong adult audience nowadays who play games like Dark Souls and The Witcher, and they really enjoy those games because they treat them like adults. And, you don't have to design a game for the mature audience, but, treat them with a little more respect and stop making such garish, silly, childish sort of plots and stupid games. I don't know. I'm going off topic at this point, but that's my thought at least.
Well, it sounds like you were talking about FF13.
Yeah, FF13. That was what I was thinking of off the top of my head. But I feel like 10 to some degree also kind of plays on that.
And definitely when they decide to make a sequel to 10.
Oh, to 10?
That was
then they make two
the
sequels?
point. That was the point when it was like, what is going on right now?
Yeah, that was when Square was getting really experimental. And I like 10-2's gameplay, but you need a balance. Like if the story sucks, then you only have like one half of a good thing.
They ought to have just taken the mechanics and made it into its own game. I don't understand why Holy Summoner Yuna suddenly...
That's something they should do more of, because I've seen talk of sequels to this, and this isn't even out yet. Final Fantasy 15 is not even out yet, and we've already suffered 2 sequels to FF13. And I would hate them. I would hate to see them do the whole like, oh, well, we have all these assets, so we have the whole decade ahead of us to make just rehash the same universe.
You think that's going to be their business model?
I think that's exactly what they're doing, as a matter of fact, yeah. With 10, it was just easier to crank out another 10 game because the assets were already there. Hey, look, we'll just take the monster designs, tweak things around a little bit, tweak the combat system around, and, write a new story with what we've already established, and bam, new game. Not everybody liked it, which is fine, but that same exact mentality is what led to Final Fantasy 13-2 and 13-3. These games should not have been linked to one another. They have so little in common plot-wise that they could have easily been their own games, but they're not. Instead, they decided to go, well, we already have these assets and all these designs and all this artwork and all that. We'll just, copy-paste it, write a new story. Now Lightning's a Valkyrie. Now everybody's dead, and we've got these new cast of people. But it's still at the same time it doesn't fit. Like it doesn't fit the Final Fantasy 13 ethos. Which I mean, it seems silly that I'm defending the story for Final Fantasy 13, but the plot for 13.2 and 3 is just bananas. It doesn't make any sense. It makes less sense than the original games, and the original game wasn't all that good to begin with. And I'm afraid by what Tim just said is that it's probably they've been developing this game for what, 8? You're right, it is 8 years because I'm looking back and it says 2006 is when they announced it during E3. So we're coming on 8 years at this point. 8 years of work. I can't imagine them putting any more work developing new assets for a new game. I see them going, look, we've put 8 years into this. Let's see what we can do with what we've already made.
Well, they better get a little more creative because I don't want to see some kind of jump where Final Fantasy 15 was a pretty okay game and then suddenly Noct turns into a male stripper. Like, what?
I wouldn't mind it as much if they wrote good stories and excluded the original cast. Look, if you're going to reuse assets, give me a new story. Exactly. Give me a new story and give me new characters. I don't mind if you reuse some of the monster designs. I feel like Dark Souls did that to an extent, but they also added enough new elements to it where it didn't feel like it was a rehash. It felt fresh. I don't know. You have to strike the right balance. I'm not sure if they're at there yet.
We need to turn this into a panel for Comic-Con 2014 in New York.
I was thinking as far as panels, we were talking about something else. That's Tim was talking about a troll panel, which would have been fun, but
it's not trolling if it's the truth. It's not.
Yeah, I need a shirt that says that. It is not trolling if it's the truth.
Okay, guys. Unless there's any more to say about Noctis and his Magic Mike band of men, I think that's a wrap. I think that's a wrap on our what we want Final Fantasy 15 to be. I am your host, Tim Torres, and we had Gabriel Zamora and Jonathan Gibbs on the show today. Let us know what you think. What do you want Final Fantasy 15 to be? What do you think Final Fantasy means to you? Are you a FF13 fan? Are we wrong? Let us know, and we'll get back to you on that.
If you're an FF13 fan, you're wrong.
I wouldn't go that far, but share your opinion either way down there in the comments.
All right, thank you, and thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you later.